Good morning friends, welcome here or welcome back to another video. Today you are joining me for a very chilled out bookish vlog. I thought I would take you along with me as I have these kind of chill few days. It's not going to be anything crazy, but those are my favorite videos to watch at the moment, is just kind of like come along with me as I just go about my daily life and we can just sort of hang out together, and yeah, it's always a fun time. So today I actually have the flat to myself. My housemate's boyfriend has been staying with us for the past kind of 2 coming up to 3 weeks, and like this is the first time this week that I will have had the flat to myself pretty much at all. So I'm just gonna enjoy being at home and being a homebody. It's coming up to lunchtime relatively soon and I am still in my PJs, but that's fine by me. I'm in no rush to get going today. It's very grey and dreary and cloudy outside, so I'm gonna go out and do lots of fun things I think tomorrow, or I think they're fun anyway. Yeah, let's just have a nice time. Ooh. Good morning friends. So I just want to go through the books that I've read so far this month in April, partly because one of them I have to return to the library today, and also because I don't really feel like doing a designated book review, like things I've read this month kind of video this month. They haven't been performing super well on my channel, and I just find that sometimes that long format video doesn't feel the best for me to do. And also I love finding out what my friends are reading, and this just feels a little bit more informal than like a full like 20-minute long video about all the different books that I read this month. So I hope that's okay. Yeah, I've got some great books to talk about, so let's crack on. So the first book I read in April was Half a Soul by Olivia Atwater. This is a absolutely gorgeous Regency era kind of historical fiction, but also with a fairy tale element. So it's this incredibly whimsical book with so much heart. It says on the back, whimsical but never frivolous, and I feel like that's exactly the way to describe this book. It follows our main character Theodora, who when she's a child she's kind of attacked by a Fey Lord who ends up somehow taking half her soul, and she is left seemingly to the rest of the world as this kind of a bit dippy and quite blunt with her mannerisms. She's not all there, and it's her kind of foray into the marriage market, if you will, and the ton and Regency London, as she's navigating that alongside her cousin. And while she's doing that, she comes across the Lord Sorcier, Elias Wilder, who is this kind of grumpy and hard to reach person who is also, I suppose, misunderstood by his peers and people around him. So she employs Elias's help to try and figure out what's gone wrong with her, supposedly. And in the meantime, this sort of peculiar illness takes over London, and it's sort of down to them to try and figure out what's going on. This is such a beautiful book. 5 stars from me. It's short but absolutely gorgeous. I just finished Ariadne 3 nights ago. This had worked its way further down my TBR list for some reason, and I'm not sure why. This was absolutely stunning. This is a retelling of the Greek myth of Ariadne and her interactions with other Greek characters and demigods and gods, and it is one of the kind of more like feminist retellings of this time and these stories, and it's just so beautiful and lyrical and obviously relatively true to the story, but has its own twist on it because you're having a different interpretation, which is what you signed up for. This is probably my favourite Greek retelling that I've read so far. I thought it was beautiful and really done with a lot of tenderness and empathy, and it's just such a wonderful story about women coming together and standing up for what they need and what they believe in. It has a really potent ending, but one that fits perfectly, and if you're a fan of Greek myth, if you're a fan of feminist storytelling, it's just done in a really gorgeous way. Also, this hardcover is absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. The character of Ariadne in this is beautiful, and one of the reasons why I think I like this retelling so much is because quite a lot of the characters are expanded on a little bit more. They're a little bit more layered and a little bit more complex. Some of the kind of, especially the Greek retellings, especially when they're talking about gods, the answer to a lot of it is just because, and that makes sense in a lot of circumstances because they have this kind of flippancy for the mortal world and that sort of thing, but this has a little bit of added texture to it, and yeah, I just thought it was wonderful. So thank you, Jennifer Saint, for this delightful reading experience. I also read The Warm Hands of Ghosts by Catherine Arden. That book has since been returned to the library, but you can hear a little bit more in-depth thoughts about that in my previous video. I did a reading vlog for that book, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was wonderful. If you don't know anything about it, very, very briefly, it is a historical fiction with a kind of fantastical element to it as well. It is set in World War I, and it follows our protagonist, Laura, who is a wartime combat nurse who has been discharged from the army, but decides to return to the front lines when she gets these interesting clues that suggest that her brother Freddie isn't dead as they suspected, and it turns out that Freddie has actually found himself in quite a tenuous position and is kind of fighting for his life in a very different way, and it just is a beautiful book exploring lots of different types of friendship and love, and it also has this element of mysticism to it, and the writing style is really gorgeous. It's a little bit darker and it was also quite somber as well, but it is really, really excellent read. Unfortunately, the next fiction book that I have to talk about is not a very good historical fiction slash fantastical book, and that is Upon a Frosted Star by M.A. Kuznia, I think. I really, really wanted to love this book. I picked it up from the library on a whim because I thought the cover was gorgeous, as are the end papers. Isn't that just beautiful? And I had such high hopes for this book. This was kind of sold to me in the blurb as a sort of Swan Lake retelling, but set in a 1920s Gatsby-inspired world. The writing is okay, but there were so many things about this book that just made it quite tedious to get through. The first qualm I have with it is that this is a retelling of Swan Lake, and they called the main character Odette Lakely, which is just so on the nose. As soon as I read that in the book, it just all started going downhill from there, really. The second thing is that the other main character, Forster, is an artist, and paint imagery is overused so much, coming from the perspective of someone who uses paint all of the time. I do not need, and no artist thinks like this, you don't need to call something white titanium white. You don't need to describe every single thing by the colour that they would be closest to in a tube of paint. So that was something that really ground my gears, especially, okay, now I'm just being pedantic, but especially if you are an artist, it's very rare that you are going to be using paint as it is straight from the tube. You're going to be mixing that with so many other different bits of colour to get the shade that you want. You're never gonna do that. Some of the setting was really, really nice. Some of the parties sounded excellent, but the characters were all really shallow and quite superficial and one-layered. I was not invested in any of them. The main character who we were supposed to be rooting for, I wasn't. The most interesting character, who's sort of the villain, we only meet him, I think, properly in the last 30 pages or so, and we learn nothing about it and his fantastical world, which is the most intriguing part of the whole book, in my opinion. It really wasn't for me. I don't think I would recommend it, but if you want to give it a go purely because you are also enraptured by the cover, then let me know what you think, and you may completely disagree. That's totally fine, but it just wasn't for me. And then the last book that I've already read this month is a non-fiction book, and I actually listened to it twice as an audiobook, and that is Atomic Habits by James Clear. The reason I listened to it twice is because it's only about 5 hours long on audiobook, and the first time I started listening to it, it was during stock take for my job. So it was nice to have on in the background, but I absolutely was not taking in all of the information from the book. And so whilst I remembered a lot from reading it then, I did decide to listen to it as well over the course of a few days, just to take in that information again. And it's a really, really interesting book, especially for somebody like myself who is starting to look into trying to implement more healthy habits and trying to figure out why certain things haven't stuck for me in the past and ways that I can work around that. But I really like the way that he goes through the information and he unpacks it, and he has a really accessible way of talking about these things, or I guess writing about these things. So I would definitely recommend, and I will probably listen or read this again in the future, but I feel like it's given me so much good groundwork to begin with, and so many things to think about as I'm starting to move forward with other areas in my life. And yeah, I really thought it was very, very good, very informative. I'm also quickly gonna mention the 2 books that I'm reading currently, because by the time this video goes up, April will have ended, and I'm almost certain that I will have finished at least one of these books, if not both of them. So the first book that I started a few days ago is The Flow by Amy Jane Beer, and it's all about river systems and just kind of water in general, specifically within England and the UK, and it's just sort of classic nature writing. It has really, really beautiful writing about her friend Kate, who was unfortunately killed whilst boating in a particularly dangerous area of river, and it's kind of all about understanding water and river systems, and both how healing and wonderful and intriguing and gorgeous they are, and also how lethal and powerful they are as well, and just why they're so important for the natural world. So this book also has this vein of conservation through it, and I'm enjoying it so far, and I feel like I'm learning quite a lot about the natural world where I live in the UK as well. And then the other book I'm reading at the moment is, you guessed it, another historical fantasy fiction, and that is Song of the Huntress by Lucy Holland, and I'm really, really loving it so far. It's a bit darker than the other books I've read so far, partly due to the time period it's set, which is kind of, it says, I think in the front 60 AD originally, and then it's 300 years later, so it's very 360 AD I suppose, but this is set during the time of when Britain was beginning to form as one united kingdom, I suppose. And the first character we meet is in 60 AD. Her name is Herla, and she is the lover and kind of warrior to Boudica. She goes to I suppose like a pagan figure who kind of promises her endless power in exchange for staying at his hall and feasting and accepting gifts from him for 3 days, but it ends up being a bit of a trick, and those 3 days are actually 300 years, and at the end of it, when she is almost released from the hall, she's actually part of the Wild Hunt, and she's kind of cursed to always be part of the Wild Hunt until 300 years later, where she rides into a battle where Queen Ethelberg of Wessex is on the battlefield, and Herla kind of unwittingly comes to her aid and realizes that this woman may be able to change the course of her life, I suppose. Queen Ethelberg is a real figure from history, but it's this multiple POV book, so it follows Herla, it follows Ethelberg, and it also follows Ethelberg's husband Ine. I'm not really sure. That's one of the things that I am struggling with this book a little bit. Maybe it's just because I've been a bit tired when I'm reading it so far, but because of the time period, it's using a lot of obviously like ye old English, also in its spellings, and then it also has a lot of Celtic and Welsh pronunciations, which, although when said out loud correctly, sound very, very different on paper when they're written, they don't look as different as necessarily I would like for someone who is unfamiliar with that. That's a personal downfall from me, but I did find it a little bit hard last night when I was reading to try and remember who was who and which ealdorman was which and whose son was whose, and trying to figure out that political landscape was a little bit tricky. But I'm hoping that as I just continue to read it and I continue to learn more about the characters and the story, that will just sort of fall into place and it'll become a lot easier. Okay, I said I wasn't going to talk for a very long time about that, but looking at how much time I've just spent talking about that, I feel I was incorrect, so apologies. I'm going to shush now, get ready for the day, and we can go to the library and return some books, maybe find some more. I really want to have a look at their cookbook section. Anyway, I'm gonna go get ready, we're gonna go out, we're gonna have a lovely day, and I'll check in with you a little bit later on.
Estoy enamorada porque cuando veo cosas muy bonitas pienso en ti, como un cafecito en la primavera se siente tan rico. Y ay, tu aroma enloquece las flores. Y
hello friends, I have just come home after my outing in town. What is my fringe doing? I think I'm gonna cut this a little bit later today. But anyway, I've just come back from a lovely few hours out and about in town. It was so nice to just kind of go out on a little solo date. And I thought, because I so rarely actually get things or buy things when I'm out and about, I'd do a teeny tiny little haul for you guys. So I'm going to start with a book that I got out of the library. I picked up Stardust by Neil Gaiman. It's so short, and because The Song of the Huntress that I'm reading at the moment is kind of quite an intense and heavy book, I thought I might quite appreciate a palette cleanser at the end. And I really liked the film adaptation of Stardust, but I've never read the book, and so many people have recommended it to me. So I saw it in the library and I picked it up on a whim. The main reason I went to the library today was because I wanted to go and get some new recipe inspiration. I'm trying to eat a little bit more anti-inflammatory at the moment, just because my eczema and my skin is flaring, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Or it has been flaring, I should say. I've managed to, you might be able to still see a bit of redness on my skin, but I've managed to tame it down a lot on my face and my neck. I'm still struggling a little bit on my hands, but that brings me to the second kind of theme that I picked up. So I've been trying to get lots of moisture on my face. So one of the things I was doing was using sheet masks, and I've never really used them before, but my friend gave me one for Christmas and I finally got around to using it, and it made a huge difference in terms of the general feeling and relief on my skin. So I decided to pick up a few more from Body Care. So I got the Beauty Formulas Enhancing Sheet Mask with Niacinamide, which sounds good. And then I've used this one before, but I've not tried this one. So these are the Garnier Moisture Bomb sheet masks. This one is hyaluronic acid and lavender. I tried this a few years ago. I don't know why I didn't repurchase it again, but I liked this a lot. And then they also had one with hyaluronic acid and chamomile, which obviously sounds really soothing. Sounds really soothing and nice. So I picked those up, and I'm gonna try to start integrating doing one of those a week. I think that might be helpful, especially as we're moving into the summer months, because my skin is always really reactive and irritable in the summer months because of all the different pollens going on, as well as the heat. The only other sheet mask that I have at the moment is one that I got from 100% Pure, which is their deep hydration sheet mask, and this has soothing aloe and hydrating trio of cucumber, hyaluronic acid and plant ceramides. So I'm really looking forward to trying this out. And then in terms of other things that I've been using to help manage my eczema, I had a couple of samples from the Body Shop of their hemp face protector as well as their body butter, and they have been really helping in terms of reducing the redness. I'm not sure if it's because they've got a slightly green tint to them, but they've been really nice. They've got quite an earthy scent to them, but it's not that off-putting. And then I've also, just for the past couple of days, I've just been trying the Plant Therapy Healing Balm, and I'm quite impressed with this so far. It's got a slightly strange smell. It reminds me of something. What does it smell of? It kind of smells a bit like celery. I'm not really sure, but it's all super natural ingredients and it is helping with the intense dryness. I did also use it on a small bit of irritation that was on my arm. Pretty much sorted that out too. So I am quite impressed with it. So yeah, I will link as much as I can link in the description box below if you're interested, especially if you've got dry or irritated or eczema prone skin. So yeah, I'm about to be a hydrated queen. I also don't know if you can hear my neighbor banging. I don't know what they do. And then, now this is the most unlikely because I very rarely buy new clothing, but I saw the most perfect dress. I've been on the hunt for more long dresses, and I've been looking secondhand, but nothing was really speaking to me. I found the most gorgeous dress. It was almost half price, and it's this lovely maxi puff sleeve dress. I think I have already put in some footage of me trying this on, but it was so beautiful and I just love the colour. I think it's going to be really nice and versatile to wear all through spring and into autumn as well. I love it, and I love the little ruffle detailing on the neckline and at the waist, but it's just not too fussy. I really like it, so that's my little haul. Anyway, so now that I'm back home, I am gonna make myself a nice cup of tea and I'm gonna do a little bit more reading in a bit. But I just mentioned before this that my fringe was really annoying me. I had to curl it a little bit extra because it had fallen flat and it's just not, it just look a bit like a monk. So I think I'm gonna give it a little trim, see if I can make it behave and just have a really nice, relaxing, chilled out afternoon at home. Hello again. So after a really chilled evening the day before, reading, editing and eating yummy food, I had a couple of things I wanted to do today. Some of them were boring tasks like sorting out my laundry, and I also wanted to remake my desktop background. I made a mood board background at the end of 2023 in readiness for this year, but I feel like my priorities and what I want to look at every day has changed, so I took a bit of time to make that today. And after that I was feeling a little bit cooped up, so I decided to go for a walk to a park, and I was so happy to see some spring flowers as well as my lovely scampering squirrel friends. This lifted my spirits so much, and it was so nice to enjoy some fresh air for a bit. I did some writing outside and I wanted to read for a while, but the rain started coming in, so I decided to head home instead. And then after cleaning my bathroom, I took a lovely refreshing shower, cozied up in some comfy clothes and made myself a hot chocolate to enjoy while reading on the sofa for the rest of the afternoon. And this is where I'm gonna leave it. So I hope you've enjoyed spending some time with me this weekend, friends. I hope this video wasn't too boring. I am aware that it's quite long, but I hope you enjoyed it anyway. Take care, and I'll see you soon in another video. Goodbye.